Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster with SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and thank you for tuning into another one of our conversations at home. Before we jump into the conversation, I do want to continue reminding everyone that we are continuing to raise funds for our COVID-19 Emergency Assistance Fund, which is supporting SAG-AFTRA members who are currently out of work due to every single closed film and television production. So please check out the link below this video and consider supporting if you're able to in any way. Today we're incredibly fortunate to be joined by the incredibly talented Lexi Underwood, who plays Pearl in Little Fires Everywhere, which just wrapped up the season this weekend. How was that experience for you been, in kind of watching and experience the show with everybody on shutdown? And, you guys have been so good at connecting with people online, and it feels like Kerry Washington came from that school back from Scandal when she initiated it. So you had a good leader at your helm. So how's that whole experience been for you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, while we did want to be together and have a premiere and be able to watch the finale together, we actually got to watch the first 3 episodes together right before quarantine happened. So we kind of got that little moment where we could all kind of just watch our work and bask in what, we created. But even just, with everything with quarantine, we're all still texting. We FaceTime each other. We actually had a big Zoom party with it was all the actors from the show, the creators, writers, producers, all the directors, ADs, wardrobe, hair, makeup. It was a huge Zoom party. So that was kind of the little special moment that we got to connect with each other. And it almost felt in a way like a premiere. We all watched the final episode right before we went on Zoom, and then we were on Zoom and we were discussing everything and kind of saying our final goodbyes. And then we, when it comes to live tweeting, I've never live tweeted before, so I was very new to that. But luckily, you said, Miss Kerry and Miss Reese are super experienced when it comes to that. So I was just kind of following their lead. I think by the finale episode, I really got the hang of it.
Yeah. I wanted to jump in by asking you about the audition process from the show, because it sounds like it was an incredibly quick process for everybody in terms of when they first taped and then came in for screen tests, and just what that journey was. And especially because I know that you and Jordan Elsas actually connected before you went into screen test together, and just what were the really conducive elements in helping you figure out your character and that whole process along the way?
Yeah. So I heard about Little Fires Everywhere a year prior to the audition process. A friend of mine was super excited. They had just read the book, and they were expressing to me their excitement about the fact that it was going to be made into a television series and that Kerry and Reese were going to be starring in it. So I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And then she was like, you'd be so great for Pearl. And I was like, oh, interesting. So I put it down in my phone notes, a little reminder to make sure that I tell my agents when the time comes if I could audition for Pearl. So a year later, I was up for a pilot, and I really thought that I was going to get it. And then I found out that I lost it the day before my Little Fires Everywhere audition, and I was completely devastated, and I was ready to go home. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I've been out here for about 5 years now. So it's been quite a journey. So I was just I was ready to give up. And then my mom told me that I had the Little Fires Everywhere audition, that I should just go in, show them what I got, give it my all, and whatever happens, happens. If I don't get it, then, we can go back to DC, but just go in there and see what happens. So I went in with very low expectations. I did not even think that I was going to get a call back, in all honesty. But I went in, and I was originally reading with the casting assistant. And then halfway throughout, I think I finished the first scene, and then he brought in David Rubin, which, David Rubin is a legendary casting director. So he brought in David Rubin, and I did the scenes with David, and that was it. And then that night I got pinned, which I was super shocked about. And then a weekend went by, and on Monday I found out that I would be doing chemistry reads with Jade Pettyjohn and Gavin Lewis. And so I did my chemistry reads, and it was Jade, Gavin, Megan, and I, and we all thought that there were going to be lots more kids there, because especially Megan and I, we didn't know that we were the only 2 that were kind of picked for Pearl and Izzy. So we went in and we did the chemistry reads, and then the chemistry reads were over, and then a couple days later I booked it. I thought that I would have to do a test, a screen test, but I didn't. So I was super shocked when I found out that I got it. It was like words can't even describe how I was feeling in that moment. A lot of tears, a lot of screaming, a lot of smiles. And then it was like a couple weeks later, and then they were casting Trip. And all of us had to come in and read with Jordan. And Jordan and I had the same agent at the time. So Jordan and I kind of like connected before the auditions, and we were reading together because I just kind of wanted to like help him and like get to know him before we went in the room. And we immediately clicked. He's fantastic. And he booked it. And then that's how all of us got cast.
And then once you had the role, I wanted to talk about your on-screen relationship between Pearl and Mia with Kerry Washington, because it's so beautifully constructed. And I was actually really interested in the way that you thought about their relationship specific to the fact it is a single parent and an only child and the unique elements that come out of that.
Yeah. So just kind of creating the authenticity of me and Pearl. I had to do some work on my own before even like meeting Miss Kerry. So originally what I started to do was I started to write poems as Pearl about some of the things that she was going through. So a lot of poems were written about the Mia and Pearl dynamic and how she feels about everything. I also created playlists as Pearl for just songs that she would listen to, songs that I thought that, Mia would have played in the car, in the Chevette, when they're going from place to place or whenever, wherever they land, like that's what she's teaching Pearl. Those are the musicians that she's playing in the household. I put songs on there, what she would be listening to with Lexi, what she would be listening to with Moody, or even with Trip. And then on top of that, I also created Venn diagrams. So I started off with Pearl and I, actually, so that I could kind of like find out the differences and the similarities between the two of us, so that I could understand her a bit more. And then I did it with me and Pearl, so I could understand, the similarities and differences between me and Pearl and why she does the things that she does, and why she immediately becomes so infatuated with Elena, and to see if there's like what exactly is Mia lacking that Elena has. And then so I did all that, and then I met Miss Kerry, and Miss Kerry and I, we actually went out to lunch, one of the first days of filming. We went out to lunch and we had an intimate discussion, and we just kind of had to sit down and be like, okay, we're playing these two incredibly complex characters, and we just kind of had to figure out the dynamic between the two of them, because in the book, Mia and Pearl don't necessarily have a race assigned to them. So you have these two incredibly like complex characters with so many things happening in their lives, but then you add the fact that they're also Blacks, and you have the authentic relationship of a Black single mother and daughter. And so we wanted to make sure that we portray that authentically, because both of us have never really been in that position before. So it was a lot of conversations, and then on top of that, just some of the on-screen chemistry that we had, I think definitely came naturally to us because we immediately clicked as soon as we met.
Yeah, and obviously, with all of us with our parents, there's behaviors that we assimilate from them, and characteristics and mannerisms. Did you look at the way that she was performing the character of Mia at all for things that you wanted to take in that way for your own?
Mm-hmm. I actually went back and I studied some of her work from Scandal and Save the Last Dance. And what I would do, I would watch it. I would watch like all the episodes. Actually, we had like TVs in our trailers. So like for the first couple of episodes, I would play Scandal in the trailer like every day. And I would look in the mirror and I would like try to imitate her. So yeah, I definitely studied her. And then when I got on set, I was just watching her and like seeing how she plays Mia, which is kind of like she has some similarities when it comes to her playing Olivia as well. So I was just honestly just taking everything from her previous work and trying to add those nuances to my performance.
Yeah, and because you were talking about the poetry that you would write, and I know that you were writing journal entries as well, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that, because it sounds like from the way that you've described it that you were also writing these in relation to the book as well as just the scripts and pulling in details of your character from there. And I was interested in the reason why that was important to you, to make sure that you were connecting your character with the scripts and with the book as well throughout.
Definitely. I mean, it's super important, I think, especially when you're doing an adaptation of a book. Celeste Ng created these incredible characters. She created this beautiful story, and I wanted to make sure that I stayed authentic to every thing that she wrote about Pearl. I wanted to make sure that I stayed authentic to that story that she originally had in mind when it came to the story of Pearl, and then adding those nuances from the script, and even adding some nuances that I thought, how Pearl would move, how Pearl would talk, just kind of like bringing all those characteristics that Celeste Ng wrote down and Liz Tigelaar wrote down and bringing them to life.
Yeah, and obviously, she's grown up in this world where Mia's an artist and just completely surrounded by creativity and artistry. So how did that influence the way that you thought Pearl would look at the world differently to her peers a lot of the time?
I definitely think that, there's a difference between Pearl and most of the kids that she goes to school with, just because of how they live. And I feel like Pearl has always had to, in a way, be mature, and also in a way kind of fend for herself sometimes, because in the relationship between me and Pearl, sometimes she does have to serve as the mom. She kind of has to, there are times where she has to make sure that she's good for dinner or for lunch, or she has to make sure that, even we saw it in episode 2, I believe, with the counselor situation, how Mia gives her the advice to fend for herself and to handle it herself. So I definitely think that it's been that way since she was younger, and that in a way has kind of matured her and has made her a bit more advanced than her peers around her. Artistry wise, I believe that, I just believe that the art kind of has influenced Pearl a bit more and has made Pearl like more accepting to the things around her and the challenges around her. And I think that immediately when she meets Elena and she meets the Richardsons and they kind of are doing like shady things to her, she immediately becomes like accepting of them, and she just wants to brush it off, because especially the way that her mom has taught her like growing up, she just wants to see the good in everybody. So I think that, yeah.
Yeah, no, you do it so beautifully. I wanted to ask you a little bit as well about one of the things that you've spoken about in working with Kerry Washington, in the way that you found her to be someone who was incredibly generous in a scene and really conscious of making sure that everyone she's sharing a scene with looks their best as well and is able to give their best performance, and creating that space for the people that you're working with collaboratively as well as just yourself, and how when you were making the show you took those lessons that you were learning in your scenes with her across to the scenes that you were shooting with the rest of the cast, in the way that you would think about things differently as a result.
So Miss Kerry is incredibly generous, but I think it wasn't only Miss Kerry, it was also Miss Reese, and it was also like just the rest of the cast members. I think we were all very conscious, and we were all very giving when it came to being in scenes with each other. Miss Reese, it's the exact same. There's one moment where Elena tells Pearl about her, but it's about the money. It's about the money and her father. And Pearl like immediately is devastated. And in the scene, I was giving like an incredibly emotional performance, and then Miss Reese kind of was just telling me to like just slow down and to not just to save my energy, because she knew all the different camera angles and I didn't necessarily know the exact camera position. But even just then, like, she didn't have to, because she knew in that moment that if I kept crying and sobbing, I would just be drained and I wouldn't be able to perform for the next scene that I had. So it's just like those little things. And then even Miss Kerry, there was one time where I believe it was the first argument scene that we had in the first episode. There was one time where, I was like yelling at Mia, or Pearl was yelling at Mia, and I was giving like a super emotional performance, and it was Miss Kerry's coverage. Miss Kerry had them actually turn the cameras around while I stayed in that place of, just frustration and anger, and just being emotional, and she told them to make it my coverage instead of her coverage first, because she felt as though I was giving my all in that moment, and she felt as though the world deserved to see that. So it's just like those little things that, I'm just super grateful for. They're truly both incredibly giving actors.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it wasn't even just the fact that you got to share scenes with them, but also working with them in terms of them both being producers on the show and having a really strong creative vision and voice. And I wanted to ask you about that in relation to starting your own production company, because you started Ultimate Dreamer Productions, and kind of what you're carrying through from this experience and what you feel is really important to yourself and the types of stories and artists that you want to support through this company and through your vision.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it was super important. And it was important and empowering just to see two incredibly strong women at the helm of such a beautiful story. And on top of that, we had an all-female executive producer team, which is incredibly rare, and something that I'm so blessed and grateful that I had the chance to do was shadow on set. So for episode 6 and episode 7, I got to shadow Nzinga Stewart and Lynn Shelton. And I just got a glimpse into the world of being a producer and the world of being a director. And honestly, I'm just so incredibly grateful for that experience. On top of that, ever since I got in the industry, really, I've always kind of made it a point to shadow directors that, I'm working with. So I got to shadow Miss Regina King, got to shadow like Megan Good. Like I've just had these incredible opportunities. And so I think by the time I was like 13, 14, I definitely started to gain a love for producing and directing and writing. And I wanted to make sure that when creating my production company, I wanted to make sure that, no kid ever has to grow up like I did, where there's like a lack of representation on the screen. Or if you do kind of see yourself being portrayed on the screen, you're playing like a sidekick or a broken character, and you're not playing, the strong, independent female who's like a boss. And so even just for like Miss Kerry, who was playing Olivia Pope at the time, like that was the representation that we had on television. So I want to make sure that with my production company, I continue to be a part of stories that are going to shape the narrative and make a difference. And I'm inspired to continue to give a voice to underrepresented characters and to make sure that, no girl like me ever has to grow up feeling as though they're not represented on the big screen.
That's incredible. And I can't wait to see what you create next in terms of storytelling, not only as an actor, but also as a producer and hopefully a director as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about your work on the show. It's been really beautiful watching your performance.
Thank you so much.